Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Pyrenees Shire Council. Councillors will today deliberate and decide on a range of matters relevant to the work of council and its communities for the welfare of its people of the Pyrenees Shire. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this ordinary council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or make a submission will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of that live stream and recording. The chair and or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming, and such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed appropriate, and that may include where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. The live stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. The public is able to view this live stream via our website at www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au, and should technical issues prevent the continuation of the live stream, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum can be maintained, and where possible, a recording of the meeting will be published on Council's website. Where a quorum cannot be maintained, the meeting will be adjourned until the issue is resolved, or the meeting postponed to another time and date in accordance with Council's governance rules. I will now move to our acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wadawurrung, Dja Dja Wurrung, Eastern Ma and Watchabolek tribes whose land forms the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respect to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of these tribes on whose land we meet today. We are all present, so there's no apologies this evening. I will open up to any notice of disclosure of interest by any councillors or officers, and there being none, I will now move to item number 6, which is a confirmation of the previous minutes. So I do now open that up for a recommendation, please. A motion to be moved on that. Thank you, Councillor Phelan, and seconded Councillor Wardlaw. Thank you. And all those in favour of those minutes, and they are carried. I will now move to item number 7, which is the business arising, but there was no business, I will now move to item number 8, which is our public participation. With our public participation, members of the community are encouraged to participate in public ordinary council meetings by asking questions or presenting a submission. So this can be done by attending in person or submitting in writing prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting, online through the council's website, by mail or hand delivered. If a question or submission is submitted in writing, this will be read by the chair during public participation, stating the person's name and township. Question time will be held first, followed by public submissions. 30 minutes is allowed for the total period of public participation. Time extensions may be allowed at the discretion of the chair, subject to the provisions of the governance rules. A person may ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting. The chair will allocate a maximum of 5 minutes to each person who wishes to address council or ask questions, and the chair, councillor or council officer to whom a question is referred may immediately answer the question or take that question on notice. There will be no discussion or debate with public attendees. However, councillors may ask questions of the attendee for clarification. We have received a question prior to the meeting, and I will just now steal the copy, thank you, from the CEO. And we had a question from Katrina Lee, who's from the district of Lexden. And her question is, further to the announcement regarding Beaufort, Warborough and Lexden hubs receiving energy efficiency upgrades courtesy of the Western Renewables Link project, can council please advise when this deal was made? Also, as the WRL has not even passed the EES stage, yet with the community angst felt by significant numbers of the community, would it not be pertinent to, as a minimum, postpone if not cancel this arrangement? Council is implying by partnering with WRL that they support the transmission line project. Council has never stated this. Is this now the case? Thank you for your question, and I would like to hand to Mr. Nolan, please, to respond to that.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I thank Katrina Lee for this question. A funding agreement between AusNet and Pyrenees Shire Council was entered into effective from the 1st of June 2025. The funding agreement provides for $500,000 for three components: three-phase power augmentation, solar and battery upgrade to the Waubra Recreation Reserve and the Community Hub facility, which has been a high priority for the council and for the Waubra community for many years. Provides for solar and battery storage upgrade to the Lexington Community Hub facility to reduce operational expenses ongoing for the Community Committee. And thirdly, it provides an upgrade to the power backup for Council's emergency response capability, which is also a priority for Council to maintain services during emergencies. A media release was issued notifying the public about the agreement last week to be transparent with the community about the agreement. Council understands and expects that the environmental effects statement for the Western Renewables Link project will be placed on exhibition in the second half of 2025. And it is Council's intention to review the technical work associated with the ES and to make a comprehensive submission in the interests of the broader community when the opportunity exists. There is nothing in this funding agreement that prevents Council from doing so. And Council does not believe this position has been compromised by entering into the funding agreement. Pyrenees Shire Council has yet to formalise its position on the proposed WRL. Instead, Council has always maintained it wants community to be appropriately informed and the community voices on the WRL to be heard and acknowledged by the Victorian Government, as well as appropriate compensation to both individuals and the community if the project goes ahead. This funding agreement can be terminated by Council should it wish to do so. The funding, however, is considered an opportunity to deliver for our community's much needed infrastructure that would otherwise need to come from ratepayer funds. Increasing financial challenges for small rural councils is such that finding the funds for projects like these is becoming more and more difficult in order to deliver for our growing communities. This funding agreement will in no way influence Council's position on the WRL, and nor will Council be a decision maker on whether the WRL goes ahead, which is the Victorian Government's decision.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Any other further clarification on that from councillors or comment? No. Thank you for that response, and thank you for that question. I think a very important one to clarify where we're at. I will now open up to any public submissions, any questions from the floor this evening or comments. Thank you.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity. I'm just speaking on behalf of Katrina's submission.
Thank you, Mr. Tony Bridie. Thank you.
Thanks for allowing us to do that. But we're just wondering, there was two things. It's that, do you think it's giving the wrong impression to the people, the ratepayers, that it's more or less money being allocated before this thing goes through? We don't know whether the WRL line will go ahead, although maybe you know more than what we know. But I'd like to know when all this was negotiated. Could you tell us that, or without the public and without the ratepayers being notified, has there been discussion in, like must have been, like in the past months? Would that be correct?
May I hand to you, Mr. Nolan?
So Mr. Brodie, yes, there has been discussion between AusNet and Council prior to the agreement being entered into, and as I said, the agreement was entered into from the 1st of June. So sometime prior to that, there were discussions, both discussions with Council and between AusNet and the various communities at different times. I couldn't tell you the exact times and all the people that were involved in those discussions, but certainly there has been direct contact between AusNet and the community, and certainly the Waubra community, I believe the Lexington community, and also with council officers and some councillors.
Don't get us wrong, I'm not objecting to the money being allocated to those areas, but it's the timing. It's the timing of the actual funding, and we don't know whether this is going to go ahead, and it's still in limbo as far as we're concerned. And I speak to people on the WRL line daily, and they are horrified that the Pyrenees Shire made a decision like this before it's actually it's given the go ahead with the WRL.
And correct me, oh yeah, sorry, just on that though too, Mr. Nolan, the AusNet, WRL approached council in regards to the funding. Is that how that worked? AusNet, sorry, rather, contacted council in regards to that. So the timing, that's sort of been directed outside, not the other way around.
So, Madam Mayor, I guess I've responded to that question already, but I guess to add any sort of further context there, an offer was on the table to council. Council could choose to accept or not accept. We couldn't guarantee that that offer was going to continue to be on the table into the future.
We were hoping perhaps the decision could have been postponed until actual the WRL line was given the go ahead, but that was just that's just our opinion. And anyway, thanks for giving us the opportunity of being able to speak to you. It's just perhaps it's just giving the wrong impression to people that that maybe like it's a way in for a road, it's a way in for AusNet to come in and go ahead with the procedure. But thanks very much.
No,
thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brodie. That's very pertinent. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor Phelan?
Yes, if I could, thank you, and thanks, Mr. Brodie, and for coming in and representing Katrina as well. We do have a discussion on the transmission lines on the agenda for this evening, and if it's not inappropriate to say so, that is about not taking the position this evening, but just looking at some of the messaging that will be going back to government, and I expect there will be some significant discussion on that agenda item. I had written copious notes on that agenda item, which sadly weren't saved on my system, but I certainly am not standing before you endorsing that project. I feel very strongly that it's not a project that considers, number one, the beautiful landscapes. It's not a project that will benefit regional communities. It is essentially a project that will link Melbourne and Sydney. And I, for one, as a community member, do not believe that we have been informed of the options, of the alternatives. And so given I'm speaking about it now, if it's not inappropriate to do so, I also know that discussions are currently being had with AusNet about alternative approaches. So it does strike me as very odd that this is coming at this time when there are live discussions about options which I think would be far preferable to community members. So yes, there's
transmission
has been no formal support from this councillor or council.
I think that the CEO just asked clarification to speaking about the whole transmission plan when she, Councillor Phelan, and it is, again, that's why I wanted to reiterate, it's this part that the media that went out was about, however it goes ahead, whatever funding we can get for the community that's going to be so affected by it, well, we want that compensation as much as possible. It still does not change that we are very much we're supporting our community and we do not want it to be detrimental, the project itself. So this is a little bit separate, but it's very valid what you're saying, and we feel exactly the same way. The process of it, has it even come at this stage? before it's even been decided, before even the EES, as Katrina rightly pointed out, has even been completed. So it's incredibly frustrating, very frustrating from our position too. So we are definitely on board with you and the community on this. And at the same time, I think Mr. Nolan did allude to the fact that we didn't want to lose any, or council officers didn't want to lose any money that could go back into the community, which rightly the community deserves, however this project goes ahead. So so I hope that answered those questions enough there. And sorry, Councillor Toll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We'll come back to this bit.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Mr. Bridie, thank you for coming in and representing Katrina. Before I was elected onto council, I was president of the Warburg Football Club and on the community hub down there, we were approached in about August, I think it was, July, August last year, by AusNet after it had been through the lower house or the upper house of Parliament where Joe McCracken had spoken about the power situation at Warburg and how we didn't have power, basically, on most nights. They came to us with a proposal that they had $500,000 to spend between Warburg and Lexington to do some upgrades.
This is AusNet approach.
AusNet approached the various community hubs. I've got a Stop AusNet sign on the front fence at home. I stuck my hand up and I said to them, we'll take everything we can get off you at the moment to try and, you know, if it goes ahead or it doesn't go ahead, at least we'll get some power and the community will get something out of it. I think if they're going to come through and do what they're doing, we've got to try and, as I said to Mr. Millwood from AusNet, I said, we'll rape you for everything we can get. And here we are further down the track. So it has been an ongoing issue. We know no one's, you know, guarantee or the project's going to go ahead and adamantly don't support it, but this is one way our communities can get a little bit of gain out of what they're going through at the moment. So.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Talbot. Thank you again. It's very important that we keep abreast of this, and we will come back to this later in the meeting. So thank you very much again. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Davey, Mr. Trevor Davey.
Hi. On a lighter note, I was actually looking through the website of the council again, as I do frequently, and we already know that in 2025, all the cuppa and chats for the community are gone. Now I find out all the Evoca meetings are gone. So I don't know how the northern part of the Shire, particularly Landsborough and particularly Redbank and Barclay, and have to travel 80 kilometres to come to a public meeting. And I think it's terrible reduction of community face-to-face meetings, Madam Mayor. And that worries me because even since January this year, the meetings moved from Tuesday to Monday, which makes it very hard for farmers on Farmers Market Day to get here. So the three actions, to me, as a simple scientist, don't make any sense to the community, and they've lost so much. So I'd like to voice my opinion that I think this needs to be looked at.
Yeah, thank you.
If the council can look at it.
Very much.
That would be great. And I have a second question. There's a lot of talk in Victoria about this emergency services levy. Well, this grabbing of money. But they're suggesting that if it goes through, they'll require councils to collect it on the rate notice. Now, I find that strange because that'll take every rate notice well above the legislated capping. So I don't understand how it works. And I was wondering if the council could help me understand it.
Actually, that's
unless you want to defer it.
That's it's a very good question though, because when we are talking about, but I think it's actually the proportion of the rates notice that comes under that capping that council's allowed to.
That's not the way they're projecting it from the state government.
Yeah, there you go. But that's not my
They're
expertise.
they're laying, unfortunately, they're laying it down
notes.
by saying, and I think it's not right.
Yeah.
They're laying it right in the
so
council's lap. And it's not right. And, you know, you've got to have a bit more clarity.
Oh gosh, we're on the same page there, heavens above. So, but I'm looking at the three directors, if anyone would like. Oh, thanks. Jacinta, would you mind responding to at least the second part at the moment?
Thank you for that question.
Which one?
The rate capping question. So in relation to that, the only element on a council rate and charge notice that is subject to the rate cap is the differential rate charge. All other charges, including the state government elements, are exempt.
So that's the slippery.
It is though, isn't it? Yeah,
Okay.
gosh. But
Well, that
thank
makes
you.
sense.
Thank you, Miss
very
Edigy.
much,
That's,
Jacinta.
yeah, but it is, but what a, gosh, it's important to bring that up, and we appreciate and very much thankful that members of the community are understanding the pressure that we're being put under as local government to have to collect this. We're very much opposed to it, and we're bringing that up again tonight, and we have been advocating so strongly, us five particularly, we've been at rallies, at meetings to try to understand how we can do this. Now we're looking at options where, how do we support our ratepayers to even pay any of it in light of the cost of living and the drought conditions that we're under now. So we're grateful for that
It's the
support.
application as well.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm out there every day,
Oh,
every farmer's asking me the same thing.
and gosh, thank you for
You know,
bringing
how's it
that up.
going to apply? How's
Yeah.
it going to
Just,
come? Sorry.
Sorry, yeah, Councillor Tom.
thanks, Madam Mayor. Jacinta, getting back to what we were speaking about before, should we be pushing for 2 rate notices, separate invoices?
That's something which I think we will come back to our discussion. So thank you, Councillor Toll, for bringing that up, because that could be one option to be able to highlight to our ratepayers very strongly.
Saying
what
they've
part
got to
of
have it
state
on one
government-
invoice.
Correct. Thank you, Councillor Toll. Just on relation to anything else just there, did any councillors want to have a chat? If I could just say, we'd definitely hear your first part of that question, and we'd like to look at that too. So because we normally do, we do hold at least a couple at Avoca, and yeah, and maybe the reason was that.
Just take it on notice.
Is that all right to take on notice? But with the councillor couples, we can talk about that too, and we're always striving to find the best way to reach as many people, and we find some strategies have worked in the past, some haven't, and the couples have been great sometimes, and sometimes weren't really appropriate for some areas and people to get attendance. So we're continually looking at that, and we want to know any which way we can reach our people, because we want to hear you and we want to be able to meet with you. So we appreciate
It was
that.
great Pyrenees initiative because you put the community's face at your face and they loved it.
Yeah,
And you know, I went to a lot of them, as I'm sure
you
can appreciate.
did, yes.
And I think having the executives there, and I won't bore you now, it made them feel really comfortable.
Absolutely,
Really did.
absolutely.
Sorry.
So yeah, so thank you, Mr. Davey, again for that.
Thank you.
If there's no other responses, again, I thank all the participation this evening, and I will now move on to item number 9, which is the councillor activity reports. And I will now ask for a councillor if they're happy to move a motion to that recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Ferrari, and seconded Councillor Toll, and all those in favour. That is noted. Now we're up to item number 10, which is the Assembly of Councillors, which occurred during the month of May, and there were 3 meetings there, and I will ask another councillor to move a motion on that, please. And that's Councillor Phelan. Thank you. Seconded Councillor Wardlaw. All those in favour, and they are also moved as well. We now move into our item number 11.1.1, and that's under our economic and development and tourism area, and that is the drought response. So a very pertinent issue at the moment, and I will now hand to our CEO, Mr. Nolan. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's no surprise to anyone in this room that drought is having an impact on our communities at the moment, and the purpose of this report is to provide an opportunity for council to consider any further action it may want to take in respect of the drought impact. Despite the recent rains we might have had in June, this drought is here for some time. The Victorian government has enacted some provisions around drought. Certainly the drought infrastructure grants made available to drought affected communities, and Pyrenees was identified as one of the drought affected communities some time ago by the Victorian government. There's also some support in respect of decision making, and also around mental health and wellbeing. In more recent times, the Premier has also made a commitment to establish a drought task force, which includes local government representation. Part of what this report provides an option for council to consider some further advocacy to encourage the state to actually formally declare this as a drought. Now, and then also to seek the federal government to formally declare this as a drought. And thereby enacting the disaster recovery funding arrangements that exist at the Commonwealth. So DRFA, disaster recovery funding arrangements, have been provisions that have existed that have enabled council in times of flood and fire to be able to seek funds for the restoration of essential community assets, and for those individuals and companies that have actually been impacted to have access to a range of, a whole suite of additional funding options that are available to those people that are impacted. In this case, drought, even though it is a natural disaster impacting on our community, those funds, that suite of funding has not been made accessible because it's not been effectively or formally declared a drought and subject to the DRFA funding. So that's incorporated within the officer recommendation that exists here. I'll just speak to, there's also a drought coordination committee been established by the Victorian government, and council has representation, and the various councils that are included in that drought affected councils have representation on that coordinating committee, and there's a range of initiatives that committee is overseeing. In addition, and what's prompted this has been the Premier's decision to establish a drought task force and invite a representation from the Rural Councils Victoria. Now, Rural Councils Victoria, RCV, has strongly advocated on this matter to the state and has a representation on that committee. And RCV has actually sought from its membership a number of suggestions and ideas and issues that could be fed through the task force. Now, a copy of those initiatives, there's quite an extensive list, is an attachment to this report. It's also suggested within the recommendations of this report that council continues to work with RCV to use its leverage, its capacity of influence through the task force to encourage additional support for our farming community and our townships as well. There's some other references within the report with respect to financial support, especially through the Rural Financial Counselling Service, which is a really important service that's accessible to our communities. There's reference to mental health and wellbeing support that's also available to people suffering through this. There are plenty of opportunities to take up that mental health and wellbeing support. And the council website actually contains a number of links that enable people to have easy access to the Rural Financial Counselling Service, to the health and wellbeing support, and to any government sort of support programs. So in summary, councillors and Madam Mayor, there is a recommendation there that council declares that Pyrenees Shire Council is currently experiencing an exceptional and prolonged drought event constituting a local disaster due to its devastating impact on agriculture, rural communities, food production and regional economies. The council requests that the Victorian State Government formally recognises this drought as a state natural disaster and activate emergency resources, including a Treasurer's advance, to provide immediate relief to farmers and affected communities. That council requests the federal government, in partnership with the Victorian government, to, and I just in respect of the numbering system on the recommendations, there's a slight change to the numbering there, but that the federal government, in partnership with the Victorian government, formally declares this drought a national disaster under disaster recovery funding arrangements, thereby unlocking access to direct support grants and exceptional circumstance loans for drought-affected farmers. The council writes to the relevant state and federal ministers and the Prime Minister urging them to expedite disaster declarations and ensure immediate on-ground support for Victorian farmers. Supports the efforts of the Farmer-led Drought Relief Alliance, and it's through that alliance that much of this recommendation has been prepared. And it's cross-section coalition working towards coordinated and practical drought support measures. Sixthly, that Council continues to work with Rural Councils Victoria to advocate on a range of initiatives to support the drought response. And finally, that Council continues to advocate for government investment in legacy infrastructure projects such as the Southern Mallee Northeast Pyrenees Pipeline and the East Grampians Pipeline projects to provide long-term water security for farmers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nolan. I will now put that recommendation forward for a motion to be moved. Thank you, Councillor Ferrari, and seconded Councillor Wardlaw. I will now, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Ferrari?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I was asked to say what stage you're at in relation to this drought and the ongoing effects, I'd say critical. It's absolutely critical. We're at a critical time now, which could mean make or break for a lot of farmers. They need some genuine support, and there's a lot of peripheral issues associated with the drought. So it's not just about dry times, no water, you know, hard to feed their stock. There's so many peripheral issues. Currently, there's funding available where it's provided on a one-for-one basis. So that means to get $5,000, for instance, you have to find $5,000 to put in to access it. And to me, that's just absurd. You know, in the time of greatest need and desperation, farmers who are suffering significantly from these drought are asked to find money they haven't got to try and access money that they should have access to anyway. It's just absurd. And you know, if we talk about mental health, if that's not adding to the mental health of farmers, then I don't know what is. The state and federal government need to get their act together urgently and provide genuine assistance to those affected without making the process onerous and for farmers to have to try and find money for applications of assistance that they simply haven't got. In an example of the peripheral issues, Victoria is essentially out of hay, so farmers are having to seek fodder from far and wide with significantly increased transport costs, and a lot of time the transport costs is equally as much as what the fodder is. So they're sourcing hay from interstate. That's just massive costs. Then trying to find money they simply haven't got. And of course, during droughts in the rural areas, the farmers suffer first, we know that, but that very quickly flows onto the local businesses and the local communities in rural areas. So it's, you know, the old saying, if the farmers are suffering in the rural areas, everybody's suffering, and it's a very true statement, none more true about drought. So there just needs to be some immediate intervention for assistance without any silly conditions attached to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Well said. Councillor Woodlaw.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to back up everything that Councillor Ferrari has just mentioned, especially along the, you know, we need to support one another. The other thing that I feel the government really needs to look at as well is, for example, they have these drought relief packages that are unattainable. So they've got this thing called asset means testing. If you have $5.5 million worth of assets, you may as well not apply. Well, yeah, okay, we've got land, we've got a house, we've got tractors, we've got everything else, but we've got no money. We can't put food on the table. So absolutely that needs to be changed. And another thing that really needs to be looked at is, for example, bringing in the hay from Western Australia, feed from Western Australia. There's plenty of it over there. We need to bring it here. At the moment, we can't bring it here because it needs to be fully covered. We're talking massive trucks that are nearly impossible to cover fully. The borders need to be open so that, you know, we need to actually fight for that as well, to get this feed to Victoria so we can actually feed the stock. So basically, we've got to keep fighting for them. Totally agree with everything that's been said.
Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw. Again, really significant points that need to be made. Other councillors? No, I think, and just again on that, there is, just speaking, I know we were at a rally yesterday and farmers again was saying about the need to be able to get that fodder, if we need to get that across, and if there are biosecurity issues that they can work with government departments that are devoted to that to be able to make that accessible and to be able to treat it. I think it's, having been part of the Rural Council's process in this as well, it's great that we're being heard to some capacity, but as you said, and other councillors have said, we need to continue this and we need to keep highlighting just how critical, as Councillor Ferrari had mentioned, it is at the moment. And not only that, again, grants that can be accessible and utilised, and also the process made a lot easier for farmers to be able to actually access those grants. Again, I just want to highlight the mental health council is very much committed to providing as much resourcing and connection to external bodies as well as internal people to be able to support our farmers during this time. And we are very much committed to continue to do that because we know the effect on our farmers greatly, but also the effect on our entire communities. And being such a heavily farming agricultural shire, it's absolutely pertinent, and that's why it's front and centre tonight about our meeting, and we do want to get that message out there. So thank you for those comments on this issue, and please know, and particularly our farming community, we are absolutely 100% behind you. So in light of that, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you so much. We now move to item 11.1.2, and that's in regards to free camping in the Pyrenees Shire. And again, thank you so much, Mr. Nolan, speaking to this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And look, the purpose of this report is in response to a request from councillors to have a look at this issue of free camping in the Pyrenees, to see if there's some opportunities there to improve our local economy through attracting visitors to the region. So it's a fairly comprehensive report. There's quite a lot of information and detail in this. I won't speak to it all. I'll just highlight a couple of things. Firstly, sort of point out that free camping on Avoca is very popular from a council perspective. It has been for some time. There's been quite a history of council considering the matter of Avoca free camping, and certainly council have made a number of resolutions in the past in respect to that, so it's just sort of documented some of that history there. There is a sort of a suggestion in the longer term that there be some sort of management plan for that whole precinct, and that's a matter that council might want to consider. In respect of Beaufort, in recent years, council has established the site at Orders Lane, and council have allocated some funds to set that up essentially through a planning permit process. There was some signage. There was a hard stand area that was prepared there at Orders Lane, and for Beaufort to be an RV friendly campsite, there were some other provisions needed as well, and that was the establishment of a dump site. And that has continued to attract visitation. Other camping sites in the Pyrenees, there's a range of other campsites about where people can camp freely. There's also some feedback there for councillors' information about a survey that we recently undertook of campers to understand how long they were staying, how much they were spending, etc. I make also reference to the Avoca Caravan Park, which is an important asset within the community, and that caravan park is on Crown land, where council is the DECA appointed committee of management. Council has a long-term lease with the lessee there, which is soon scheduled for review by council, and that's a matter for council to consider at some point in time. But that's a beautiful little spot for campers and people to come and visit the region. And of course there is the Beaufort Caravan Park, which has been subject to plenty of other consideration by council, and council's invested heavily in that. We've just completed a $1 million upgrade to that to introduce new cabins, and that was the subject of a specific report by council the last council meeting. I'll just remind council that the local area action plan, this was a comprehensive plan that actually sets out the priorities for attracting visitation and growing the visitor economy. And there are 6 of those actions listed in there. And action 3 relates to upgrades to the Beaufort Lake Caravan Park and the Avoca and Landsborough Caravan Parks as being an initiative to grow the local economy. I guess in respect of what is the economic benefit associated with this, sort of getting to the chase here, it's understood from the Tourism Research Australia that on average, the estimated overnight visitor spends $214 for an overnight stay in the Grampians region. And these figures include visitors who are paying for accommodation costs through those staying with family and friends. The survey of campers that I mentioned earlier in the report suggests that campers spend about $87 on average per night just through that sort of local survey. And that equates then to about $160,000 per annum to the local economy. I guess when you, that's not to be scoffed at, but when you compare that to the economic benefits associated with the Beaufort Lake Caravan Park, the business case for that identified that there was around $3.3 million per year in direct and indirect benefits to the local economy from the Beaufort Caravan Park. So it puts in perspective some of the economic benefits associated with each of those activities. And it's essentially on that basis that the local area action plan that was prepared recommended that that's where council invests its efforts and its funds. So councillors, that's there for background information. Happy to take any questions. But the recommendation is that council notes the details and the recommendations in the report and that council commits its resources to the development of the Beaufort Lake Caravan Park as the main priority for caravanning and camping at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. A lot in that report. I will now open that up to a motion to move from that. Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in addition to the Avoca camping along the River Flat, which is very popular, personally, and not just me, a lot of the people in town would also love to see the installation of some little barbecue fire pits. I know that gets, some people don't want them, some do them. I do think, though, there is definitely a benefit. I do not see the harm as long as they're maintained, put in good spaces so it's not going straight into the river type thing. But certainly I'd love to see something like that with perhaps some small holdings of free firewood or not too expensive firewood made available at a location along the site. Maybe Deeker or someone would be prepared to put some wood there, you know, when they're doing some stuff. And I do wonder why we have the banning of grey water. I understand most caravans have the storage facilities to take it away, but my query comes, why we have it when all the town drains flow freely into the river? It just makes no sense. Yeah. Anyway.
I mean,
We take that on note.
Madam Mayor, well, there is a difference between stormwater and grey water. And,
Yeah.
So stormwater.
Have you seen the roads though? And the water comes off the roads and, you know, just my.
Something to consider. I do
Yeah.
like that. Thank you very much, Councillor Woodlaw. Councillor Phelan, would you like to speak? Any other councillors on that? No. I think just for one picture of just how busy our RV camping is getting, I'm sure there's very rarely a moment I'm driving through Beaufort, during the day at least anyway, when there's someone not using that dump point, which was one of the actions as council that we committed to create that opportunity. Yep. And so the fact some of those figures that you're talking about is incredible, and it's a passionate objective of us as council to get more people into our area, to understand how beautiful it is and to stimulate our economy through that. And I think that's a really positive sign going forward. And we're very grateful for those statistics. And I think it was very pertinent to get those survey results so we can look at how we can better serve our guests coming into the community. So thank you for all that information too. So in light of that, may I ask for a vote on that? All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. We're now up to item 11.2.1, and that is the preferred supplier panel. And this is in our asset and development services. So I will hand over. Thank you to Mr. Douglas Gowans to speak to this report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council information on tenders received for preferred suppliers, professional services, and preferred supplier intermediate panel, and seeks council's endorsement for inclusion into the preferred supplier panel. Council receives 68 submissions for the professional services panel and 29 submissions for the intermediate panel. The intermediate panel is effectively a all-inclusive panel, not just separated by professional services, but gives people a midpoint in our 3-year cycle to allow other contractors to join the panel of preferred suppliers. We also have another panel that's not being considered by council tonight, which is the trades panel, and so that may be a question council might have about where all the trades, and that's because we do have a trades panel as well. Service providers were invited to submit details about their company, systems and services offered. The panel of suppliers is established to enable council to select the best value provider for any particular application. 97 submissions were compliant and 5 submissions were non-compliant. And just for councillors' awareness, the 5 suppliers that were non-compliant, which aren't listed in this report, weren't locally based and were basically non-compliant because they weren't prepared to accept the terms of tender. They wanted to put their own clauses in effectively to suit their particular business needs. So just so council has that information. The preferred supply panel will provide the council market competitive rates for required services. And it's the officer recommendation that council receives a preferred supplier list for preferred suppliers for professional services as shown in the table, which is in the report, and that council too receives the preferred supplier list for preferred suppliers for intermediate services as shown on the table.
Yeah, thank you. With that before us, do I have a councillor happy to read a motion on that? Oh, sorry, thank you, Councillor Wardlaw, and seconded Councillor Ferrari. I certainly didn't look. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Ferrari, I think it's sort of self-explanatory, but thank you for that clarification to Mr. Gowans, and it's great that we have a good, healthy list there at least, and that they've gone through that process so that they can best meet our needs. So in light of that, may I put that to the vote? All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. We're now to item 11.2.2, and that's the Pyrenees Shire Council Renewable Energy Development Position Statement. And I will now hand again, thank you to Mr. Gowans to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is for council to consider adopting a position statement designed to guide future negotiations and advocacy to ensure maximum community benefit for new renewable energy initiatives. As council would be aware, Victoria is currently undergoing a transition to renewable energy, and several major renewable energy infrastructure projects are already operational within the Shire, and others are proposed in and around the Pyrenees Shire. Pyrenees Shire Council has worked with Central Victorian Greenhouse Alliance and the Community Power Agency to develop a position statement on how to engage and maximise community benefits from renewable energy developments. Pyrenees Shire Council is committed to ensuring renewable energy generation delivers long-term benefits for the community, environment and the local economy. This position statement outlines clear expectations for how these developments will be planned, delivered and governed. Council expects the renewable industry to engage proactively with council and the community and collaborate on benefit sharing to ensure lasting positive impacts. Renewable energy infrastructure projects have significant economic, social and environmental impacts on the communities and landscapes that host them. The development of these projects requires a strong advocacy tool that sets out clear community expectations for those who have influence over the design and implementation of new energy projects in Pyrenees Shire. If the energy shift in the Pyrenees Shire is left to roll out in an uncoordinated manner, there is a risk of further escalating community division and distress, as well as missing opportunities that have the potential to create legacy benefits for generations to come. The position statement articulates expectations and recommendations for developing renewable energy in a way that best leverages community benefit. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that Council adopts the position statement on new energy development in principle as an interim position for future review within the next 6 months.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. May I ask a councillor happy to move a motion on that recommendation?
When he was.
I'll go Councillor Toll and second to Councillor Wardlaw. Councillor Toll, would you like to speak to that at all?
Love to, Madam Mayor.
Thanks.
As mentioned before with Mr. Bridie, we don't have a lot of say in our position statement. Being a council, it seems that the state government can just grant authority to people to come through and put up transmission lines or battery farms or wind turbines or solar panels wherever they like and consult us second. But I think if we make a stand that we object to them just being able to come in and railroad us doing what we're doing, it would be a good message to send. I think our appetite is consumed for what we've got. We've got enough scarring around our beautiful environment that's going to be with us for a hell of a long time. And I think there's a bit of a change in the community's attitude towards it all as there's more coming out, and it's not as cost friendly as it appears to be or environmentally sound. And that treaty we've signed to say we're going to have zero emissions seems to be failing. So I think we strongly oppose it and review it in 3 months, Mr. Gowans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toll. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say I'm glad to see that it's got a 6-month timeline, so we're not committed, we're not tied in. We can actually relook at this and, yeah, good.
And other councillors, sorry, Councillor Ferrara.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is slightly on notice, Mr. Gowans, but I'm happy for you to take it on notice if necessary. I have talked about in the past about how much is enough in relation to wind farms, and considering in our strategic position that we hold and with the possibility of having a transmission line, I think that's going to only attract additional interest in building more and more wind farms, which we know the community don't want. Can we get a commitment, or have we had any commitment to say at what stage do we say is enough? Because, you know, our landscapes, when we've just heard about the free camping and the visitors and everything about loving our landscapes and our natural environment and our horizons, you know, it would be terrible to have that ruined by everywhere you look, you see wind farms. So I'd just like to really keep that in mind. When's enough's enough, and can we get a commitment about what that will be?
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari, through you, Mayor. Really good question, and something that the council could potentially adopt a stronger position on. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're putting forward an in principle view, because, you know, we know that there are some renewable energy companies already looking at potential proposals. And so if they are going to happen, we need to make sure we're maximising the benefits. But I think that's a strong potential position for council to have. And there's a report coming up in 2 reports' time that that might be able to further reiterate that position. And it's worth kind of noting that the proposed renewable energy plan that is coming up in a couple of reports, we've currently got 22% of the Shire's landmass that's impacted by renewable energy, with a 2 kilometre buffer on every turbine, and including the proposed power line upgrades through the Shire, not just the Western Renewables link, but a future upgrade to the existing line that's there at the moment. So there's actually more than one project at play within the state's current proposal. So council might recall that back in August last year, we actually did a submission before council developed where its renewable energy zones were going to be. And one of the key things was about preserving landscapes within the Shire. And we know that that's a strong issue for the Pyrenees community. And yeah, the proposed plan has avoided our uplands areas, but hasn't necessarily taken into account how much is a reasonable amount for take up of the Shire in terms of land area and visual impact from the Shire. So there's something we can, which again I'll touch on in a couple of reports' time, can emphasise that the visual values and the beauty of the Shire is of high value to the Pyrenees community.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans, and thank you, Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. I'd just like to clarify something, Madam Mayor. My other point, and I've said it a number of times, is we're getting all the infrastructure here and the eyesore to our landscapes, but we're not getting any benefits from the things that's all going to Melbourne. So we do get some, feeble community benefit. I call it feeble because it's a bit of a dangle of the carrot. But we actually we don't get cheaper power, we don't get better power to our sporting facilities, we don't get any of that. It all goes to Melbourne. So we get the eyesore, Melbourne gets the benefit.
Well said. Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Wardlaw.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make a point, and I advise you to look this up yourself because this is just something I remembered. Recently, the Grampians Shire has stopped any further wind farms. It was a motion in council that no longer accepting any more wind farms. It just might be something to look at and see how they've processed through that, because they had a lot planned, as you can see through that Navarre Green Power Hub. There was a lot supposed to happen there that apparently they're putting a stop on. So just worth a mention.
It might be worthwhile asking Mr. Gowans to clarify the approval process. Because just to clarify that point, might be just ask Mr. Gowans for clarification around.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Would you mind?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw, and through you, Mayor. It's worth noting that for quite a few years now, council isn't the planning authority to approve renewable energy infrastructure. However, and this gets to the heart of what this position statement is, council can send a message through its position statement in that, if it chooses to go even further in its position statement around what it would like to see for its community. And that's why I'm suggesting a review within the next 6 months, because we're not quite sure where state policy is going to land on where these renewable energy zones are. That might influence council's position. So ultimately, a position statement about what council's expectations are from renewable energy companies goes a long way to whether they are actively looking within our Shire. But it's worth also noting that they still could be looking. They might hear our message, but ultimately it's the state who makes the decision on whether renewable energy facilities will go ahead or not.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans, but I think it is pertinent to understand that message that we want to send through, and that's probably
That's
what Graham
probably what it
did.
was,
I
yeah.
haven't seen it, but we will check on that.
If I
too.
was wrong, yeah.
Yeah, but no,
Yeah.
yeah, gosh, thank you for that clarification. Any other councillors on that one? I think, again, it's incredibly important that we're strong on this one, and I think the key issues in this report too is that, you know, with current ones that are already there, that we're ensuring that maximising that community benefit, that we absolutely push and expect a bit greater transparency about tracking these projects. And because, as we said, we often find out after companies have actually come in and started negotiations with state government or with other parties, and it's highly disappointing and really frustrating to know what's going on. But we want to advocate for that transparency and that community engagement at all stages of these projects. But more so, we want to be able to, advocate and set out, as it says here, the strong advocacy tool that sets out clear community expectations for those who have influence over the design and implementation of those projects. And I think it's even more highlighted, and we will get to this in the next couple of items, but that we as a Shire, we don't want to see any new projects. We want to be able to manage the projects that are already here and protect what is here. Both, I know Mr. Gowan spoke about, the aesthetic side of it. We live in one of the most beautiful parts of the country, and we don't want that further damaged by these projects. But we also have incredible biodiversity in our environmental. Our flora and fauna is incredibly crucial, and a lot of them are critical. Just to speak of the Brolga, just as one example, when we look at and this is, I think it is an attachment, but councillors, and I'll just show that for the public's, for their notice, the map and the item that we'll be discussing in a couple of items' time looks to create a zone that goes across one of our most potentially vulnerable parts of our Shire, and it's absolutely astounding. We will get to this in that item, but that they would want to put that across an area that is critical for species such as a Brolga, but is already heavily inundated by projects. To further then look at that, to add further projects is ludicrous, to be honest, is just wrong. And so we'll be looking at that. But that's a personal comment on the next one. But thank you for that. And I think it is so important that we do take a stance, and we're doing that at our council meeting tonight, to adopt that position statement so that we can have as much control as we can. And we know that there's a lot of control being taken away from local government, but that we can send that very, very clear message that we don't want projects that are going to be detrimental to our area. We love and protect this area, and we want any development to be in support of that as well. So thank you, and for all the comments on that as well. So in light of that, I will put that to the vote, that motion. All those in favour? And that's carried. We'll now move to item 11.2.3, and this is about the road management plan review, which is completed for June 2025. So thank you, Mr. Gowans, again.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council's endorsement to seek community feedback on the updated road management plan. In a report presented at the April council meeting, the required steps for reviewing and adopting the Pyrenees Shire Council road management plan were outlined. This report also informed council of the requirements to update the road management plan in the statewide template for consistency. Council officers have reviewed the road management plan as per the requirements of the Road Management Act and present the draft document to council. Council officers confirm that the current draft meets operational requirements. The draft road management plan is intended to be put on public exhibition to seek submissions and utilise deliberative engagement opportunities prior to it being presented to council for adoption. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that council endorses the public display of the road management plan for a planned consultation period, that council be presented with any submissions prior to the report being presented for adoption, and that council seek a report for adoption prior to the 31st of October 2025. And that's in order to meet our obligations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Do I have a councillor happy to move a motion to that recommendation? No, thank you, Councillor Phelan. Seconded, Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Phelan, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Ferrari. Any other councillors? It is quite straightforward, that one, and it'd be interesting to see any feedback in regards to that updated plan, and that will come to next meeting, correct, so that we, or not?
Within a couple of meetings.
Possibly, if there's enough public submission. When will public submissions close on that? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. It will be within the next couple of months.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that the report that comes back to council is no later than the October council meeting.
Yeah.
We will try to bring it before then, but there will be a clear period of consultation. We might try and do some consultation sessions depending upon the feedback that we get.
Brilliant.
It can be a dry subject, but it is really important because it's basically a commitment on how we will manage our roads, especially the service level at which we'll intervene. So there is some really important things for the community to consider. It can be quite dry reading, but the devil's in the detail. It's about how quickly we'll respond to defects in our road network.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gowans. As you said, it can be a dry subject, but it's a very pertinent one to everyone who uses those roads. So please, if you do have that time and that interest, we greatly appreciate the feedback once that goes out. So now I would like to put that to the vote. All those in favour, and that is carried. Item 11.2.4 is in relation to the Victorian Transmission Plan. Again, thank you, Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to inform Council of the Victorian Transmission Plan and seek approval of the key messages that will form a submission to the Victorian Government. VicRed has released a draft of the Victorian Transmission Plan for consultation, and submissions on the plan are due later this month on the 24th. Council made a previous submission in August 2024 and raised the following issues around Council's expectations around engagement with communities and stakeholders. Also the various impacts on communities, landholders and businesses to be managed and mitigated. Also the importance of landscape on visual impact of transmission infrastructure on landscapes. And lastly, the need to undertake landscape assessment across parts of the Pyrenees Shire before making decisions about where infrastructure is to be located. It is recommended that a further submission is made that discusses a couple of key points. Point number one is that there's a lack of consideration of the extent of existing renewable energy facilities within the Shire and the cumulative impact of these, which gets to Councillor Ferrari's point earlier. Also, point two, that there's assessment of values within the renewable energy zones, and the Mayor made quite a pertinent comment about the environmental values around Brolga that had quite an impact when the consideration of the Brewster Wind Farm was put forward. And point three, the inadequate community consultation engagement that doesn't seem to have picked up on local knowledge. Contained in the report is some of the high-level information that's out there for the community to consider. There are there's 7 renewable energy zones across the state on land, and 2 of the proposed renewable energy zones are partially within the Pyrenees Shire. And there's some maps within the report that show the extent of that, and there's a detailed map that Council have been distributed tonight. The draft renewable energy zones have been created to channel investment and optimise the planned and proposed transmission upgrades statewide. Projects will still have to gain agreement from individual landowners to host renewable energy infrastructure. The Council's submission is proposed to be based around the following key themes. the extent of renewable generation infrastructure existing in the Shire and the lack of consideration given to geographic distribution and the cumulative impacts. The draft plan and renewable energy zones give no consideration to the extent of the infrastructure within the Shire. The Shire has made a significant contribution to the state renewable energy target. Continued development of renewable energy facilities will impact communities, landscapes and values within the Shire. The strategic landscape assessment undertaken in the formation of the renewable energy zones relies on data sets and a multi-criterial analysis that comparatively ranks all land in Victoria. However, council is yet to be convinced that this has actually taken into account the local values of the areas that have been identified. And it's also the officer's view that there's inadequate consultation on renewable energy projects, particularly in rural areas, which is a significant concern raised by council and the community within the Pyrenees Shire. Concerns have been raised about the transparency of consultation processes and the availability of information around proposed projects, as well as the removal of the planning panel process, including third-party appeals of VCAT. Therefore, the draft Victorian transmission plan is of interest to the council and the community. It would be appropriate for council to make a brief submission on the draft plan. And it's the officer recommendation that council endorses officers to provide a submission on the draft Victorian transmission plan.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans, and picking up a lot of those points. Do I have a councillor willing to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Phelan, seconded. Councillor Toll, sorry, that's all right. Councillor Phelan, would you like to speak first on that?
I would, thank you. And I know I might repeat some of the points I made earlier in response to Mr. Bridie's question. I would like to move, number one, an alternate motion, and that is that the submission comes to council for endorsement, noting that this is an issue which will be felt very strongly by the community. As councillors here to represent community views, I think it would be far preferable if we were able to actually endorse the submission. Following that alternate motion, I suspect that this is an issue that will trigger a very similar response to what the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund has done. I know there is a lot of community angst already. It is a project which, to my understanding, is very much about connecting Melbourne and Sydney, two of the largest cities, and shoring up the grid there, with no benefit to regional communities and great detriment to beautiful landscapes in regional communities, which we know our communities hold really dear. But one thing I'm also really concerned at is the very limited scope of engagement, timing and scope of the engagement. To my knowledge, and certainly I've not seen or heard any explanation from government, from VicGrid or anyone else on what alternatives have been considered. As I said earlier, I know that there are current discussions underway between more contemporary, sophisticated technology companies and VicGrid on alternatives to overhead transmission line, alternating current transmission lines. So it's really disappointing that some of these alternatives are not explained to the community, and if they aren't viable, that's similarly not explained to the community. So I'd like, through the submission, to see a request for further information. I'd also just, like to note that if there are no other options to transmission lines, we've seen that the government is very committed to underground legacy projects in Melbourne. And I would really like to see that similar commitment extended to regional areas, and that the power lines go underground. Of course, we know the response will be that it is more costly. Well, I think regional communities are covering a lot of the costs of very significant underground infrastructure in Melbourne. And at the end of the day, these beautiful landscapes are for all Victorians, and we do need to protect them.
Well said. Thank you, Councillor Phelan. And before I comment, I'll go to Councillor Toll, who's seconded. Oh, sorry, now just before we do that, so we're just commenting on the governance side of changing that. Would you be happy sort of wording it to that it comes back for councillor feedback? The only issue we have, the submissions are due, again, short time frame by the 24th of June. We do have a special council meeting, but perhaps if we have feedback, and then that feedback can be noted at the special council meeting in a couple of weeks, if that works well. Does that work? Are you happy with that, Councillor Toll, for that wording? Is that all right, Shan? Did you get that? So on light of that, just to make sure that that feedback is given before it is sent, I'll now hand to Councillor Toll, sorry, but thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It seems to be a night of bashing up the renewables, but I think they need to be bashed up. I've had enough of them. It came out last week or the week before that the proposed power line was going to be $16 billion over budget. Now, I'll just say that again, 16 billion. Now, where do you work out it's dearer to do that than underground? I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, we said it was too dear to go underground, we've got to go above ground, but then all of a sudden, the 16 billion, just brush that under the carpet. These we all reassessed, which we know they're not good at doing at the moment. As a small rural community, we've got a hell of a lot of infrastructure in there at the moment. We don't need any more. I've said it. We just don't need any more. We're providing food to the city. We're providing power to the city. Now we're going to provide ugly power lines to the city. If they want it all, why don't they come to us? We've all moved out of the city or hate the joint. Why do we supply them? You know, they're not up here. They get held up in a little rail crossing. Well, you've got to move heaven and high water to fix it because it might hold them up a fraction. If it does go ahead, what's the implication? This is a draft plan here for their renewables. A bit like our Waubra master plan. It's only a draft. Hopefully it doesn't, you know, and what's to say it's not expanded? What's the rules of renewables outside the zone? All of a sudden, we need to light this new tunnel in Melbourne. We might have to build another wind farm. We might have to put more power lines, but I think if we strongly oppose it as best we can, get as nasty as your officers can get, Mr. Gowns, for us, and that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toll. Other councillors, would you like to speak to that? No, and I think and we'll be looking into the. Would you like to speak? Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah,
Councillor Director.
Yep, and I will not get political. That's not my role. I'm apolitical in my role. I just want to make sure that council understand that this particular plan is not actually about the Western Renewables link. There is a power line upgrade, but it's about a capacity upgrade to the existing line as part of this particular proposal. It's not to say that council couldn't make comment within its submission on the Western Renewables link, but it's actually the Western Renewables link not actually part of the renewable energy zone. So I just wanted to make sure that council clearly understood that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just comment on that, Mr. Gowans? It's not part of the project. However, we can see through the documentation, the asterisks with this links to the WRL projects. And we know there's a link because it's associated with all of the renewable projects. So I think we can very much refer to it in this context.
And it is highlighted on our map as well. But in light of that, oh, sorry, Mr. Gowan, sorry.
So that map is an internally produced map about where current and future renewable energy infrastructure is.
Yes.
So it's got to be careful
Sorry,
that's not actually part of the collateral
Yes.
that was provided as part of the renewable energy zones. I just want to make sure.
No,
we're
yeah,
clear
I think it's just, we know that it's still linked. It wouldn't be there if the renewables weren't there. But I think on that point too, just looking at the wind farms, and you only have to look at where the wind farms and how many turbines we have in the area that they have earmarked still for proposed development. I think a very strong message and statement we need to make as part of our submission, as well as those other points, is that we don't want to be part of that of the proposed renewable energy zone, which, sorry, is on this map is yellow. I can't remember what colour they've got on theirs, but we just don't want to be part of it. Other councils may be open to that, but we would really like to be removed for a number of reasons. And you've just mentioned Brolga, but there's other species that will be so affected, and we know that we were not heard in the Brewster Wind Farm submission there. You alerted us to that too. You've alluded to the fact we want to know, we don't understand why we can't put in those submissions once it gets to state level, because that's just democratic fairness in itself. But here, we've already got so many turbines in that area. We know it's affecting Brolga communities there and other species, but we also know this is an agricultural area that's heavily farmed in a very good way. We don't want other infrastructure impacting that. And we're really flabbergasted that we're even part of that proposed area. When you look at the just on this map alone, which I know is internally produced, but you can see the wind farms in the area that's taken up, and then they've put a whole chunk over that. It's not fair, and it's not wise development. And let alone the fact of the aesthetics. We already look in every direction across our shire and we see turbines. Now, we're all for protecting our environment and what is good development to protect and look after our development, but we already know the impacts that these projects are having negatively on our environment. We don't want to add to that. We want to wait and see. We don't believe, like I think Mr. Gowans, you mentioned on our last item, 22% of our shire is already taken up. That's over a fifth, and we really are batting above our average, and we want to send a very clear message back to state government. We don't want any more projects. We're already having to deal with the effects of the ones that we already have here, and we want to do that in a correct and productive way. And the Western Renewables is still part of that, whether or not it's not part of this actual this proposal of government here, but it is linked, and it is a big part of affecting that. So we'll bring that submission back. But yeah, sorry, Councillor.
Oh, no, you're fine. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to bring to light another thing. I wonder the actual effects on animals. So I'm talking the Brolgas and that. There was a case in America, a very, very good quarter horse stud that had the wind farms come through. He won. He got a payout from the government because he had perfect hooves on his horses for, his whole 60 years or whatever. And then once they were in, something to do with the vibrations in the ground has destroyed the horse's hooves. So his perfect line is now no longer a perfect line. I mean, what does that do to sheep? What does that do to, it's way more than just this little windmill,
Yeah, thank you so much, Councillor Wardlaw. And again, we know we're going to have to be very clear in this submission again as well. We know with the Brewster wind farm that a lot of evidence that was actual evidence that we feel was disregarded, and so we want to make sure in this regard that that's absolutely taken into account. So we thank you, and we thank you in advance for the time that we go into that submission. So yeah, any other further comment? Or sorry, were you going to speak?
I was just a bit clear about the resolution.
Oh yes, sorry.
Before council votes on it, so that council endorses the officers provide a submission subject to receiving councillor feedback on a draft to be circulated by email to councillors.
Happy with that.
And with the full submission be reported back to a future meeting of council.
Thank you. Is everyone happy with that? Seconder? Mover? You're happy,
Yes.
or did you want any clarification?
Yeah, can we just coming back on that point of the Western Renewable Link, it does actually say in the draft submission plan, these areas are aligned with WRL. And there is the WRL dotted line running straight up through the centre of those renewable projects. So I think we need to bring that out very strongly Because we know that apart from whether we agree or disagree with the additional wind farms, once they're there, the transmission line we know will be going up. So they are very much interconnected. And I think we can't lose sight of it just because there's a little asterisk and a dotted line here.
They're like a string on a kite.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments? This is a really pertinent issue. I just don't want to miss any. No, brilliant. I know the gallery is getting excited on this one too, but we'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Gosh. We're now up to item 11.2.5, and that's the flood mitigation investigation at the Avoca Recreation Reserve. Thank you again, Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to present the draft final report for the flood mitigation investigation of Avoca Recreation Reserve project to the Avoca Recreation Reserve user groups and the broader Avoca community that is impacted by floods. The Avoca Recreation Reserve has experienced 4 major floods since 2010. Water Technology was commissioned to conduct the flood mitigation study, and the project included a full flood assessment and potential mitigation options to protect the Avoca Rec Reserve and surrounding properties from future flood events. One of the key elements of the investigation was community engagement. Community in-person sessions were held, and there were other consultation opportunities offered as well, including some one-on-one meetings. During the 2022 flood event, the men's shed facility and the football and netball club rooms were closed for 10 months, which significantly impacted the community. Avoca community members made some following mitigation suggestions as part of their feedback in developing the mitigation study. It was proposed that these areas be investigated to extend the existing levee or add a new levee around the facility without impacting neighbouring properties. Concerns over access, aesthetics and practicality were expressed. There was a proposal to relocate the men's shed. There was a proposal to relocate the entire facility. And there was also a couple of other recommendations or mitigation actions to consider, and one that the Avoca River is full of debris and fallen trees, which should be removed, and also that there should be a consideration of increasing the capacity of the Avoca River. Several draft mitigation options were presented to the Avoca community members, where the overall feedback was positive. A particular preference to protect the Avoca Rec Reserve club rooms with flood barriers and also to relocate the men's shed were considered priorities. Any negative impact on properties was undesirable, and these options were not investigated further. And council might recall, for those who attended the sessions, that the large mitigation option of having a flood wall, not just around the facility, but around the men's shed and including a number of other properties, actually had a negative impact on some properties on the other side of the Avoca River. And when consultation occurred with those particular community members, it was clear that they didn't want to have any further flood impacts. That they could have considered some localised mitigation options, but there was a preference to not have any negative impacts. So those options were not considered further. In conclusion, to acknowledge the significant contribution to the flood mitigation investigation, it is appropriate for the draft flood mitigation and cost-benefit analysis report to be shared with the Avoca Recreation Reserve user groups and the broader Avoca community. Sharing the draft report at this stage not only recognises the importance of their involvement in the project, but provides an opportunity to gain valuable feedback prior to the formal endorsement of recommendations by council. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that council approve the release of the draft final report for the community mitigation investigation of Avoca Recreation Reserve to the Avoca Recreation Reserve user groups and the broader Avoca community that is impacted by flood. 2, that council formally write to the Avoca community members who participated in the project and provide access to the draft report. 3, that council provide access to the draft report on council's website and in hard copy at the Avoca Resource Centre. 4, that council commit to undertaking a community information session on the recommendations of the draft report. And 5, that council request a further report following community consultation seeking the formal endorsement of the recommendations contained in the final flood mitigation and cost benefit analysis report for the Avoca Wreck Reserve flood investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. And gosh, it's been a road, hasn't it, for those people and the wreck reserve there. I will now put that recommendation to ask a councillor to move a motion on that. And Councillor Wardlaw, seconded. Councillor Phelan. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Having followed this fairly closely, attending the discussions with the town, I'm really looking forward to seeing this next draft. The consultation process was actually, I felt, very successful. There was a lot of positivity. There was a lot of people wanting to get the best outcome, and it actually sort of altered my view on things as well, the ideas that came out of it. I still believe, though, that there should be some, which you're probably doing, some effort put into finding another suitable location for the men's shed. I feel like we could set them up much better somewhere else and remove them from the problem at all going forward.
Good comment. Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw. Councillor Phelan, would you like to speak to it? Any other councillors? I think, like, agreeing it's important, and there has been so much work gone into this, but we're grateful for that, and it's very necessary. And taking Councillor Wardlaw's point, like, if we can be really proactive in looking at how we can support groups to a better alternative to where they are, that will also add to the benefits of this of moving forward in this area. So I now put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the work that has gone into that and the community input as well. Item 11.3.1 is in regards to the very, very pertinent Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund. And I thank our Director, Ms. Jacinta Edity, to speak to that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report's presented to enable councillors to understand the legislative framework and associated requirements council has regarding the Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund, the ESVF. From 1 July 2025, the Victorian Government's Fire Service Property Levy will be replaced by the newly legislated ESVF. The new legislation will result in substantial increase on all Victorian property owners, with a disproportionate increase to the primary production agricultural sector. However, as a result of recent changes, a cap has been applied to the primary production category for the 25-26 financial year. The new ESVF will add an additional administrative burden to councils due to additional complexities associated with the initial calculation and some caps and rebates. Ultimately, these additional burdens will no doubt divert valuable resource from local services to our community who are already experiencing challenging natural and financial situations. There's a range of additional information throughout the report in relation to the ESVF, including some changes in the categories, some different rates, and some specific examples on medium-based CIV and charges, and what those shifts will do to various sectors of our community. From a financial perspective, although there is a mindset within our community that they will reduce their payments by the value of the ESVF, the reality is that the legislative framework will result in the ESVF being paid and a shared outstanding balance remaining, as payments are required to be allocated proportionally between council element and the ESVF element of charges contained within the rate notice. Considering the current economic climate and the impost of the changed ESVF, it is expected that a number of community members will require more flexibility in their payment of their rates and charges, and council will continue to enable payment plans without the impost of interest to recognise these challenging times. It's therefore the Office of Recommendation that council 1, continues to express its significant disappointment with the Victorian Government's approach to the levy collection and implementation of the ESVF. 2, continues to oppose local government being a collector on behalf of the Victorian Government while ensuring council meets the relevant legal obligations imposed on councils regarding the collection. 3, promotes flexible payment options for our community without the impost of interest on unpaid amounts when initiated via a rates payment plan, and including options to organise over the phone, counter and via an online digital form. 4, as a whole, councillors, officers and community work collaboratively to ensure respectful conversations are maintained throughout the collection period. 5, through financial reporting, continue to monitor financial commitments and associated cash flow to ensure financial sustainability. 6, continues to advocate for the ESVF to be administered by the Victorian Government. 7, continue to advocate for more equitable funding model for all Victorian property owners. And 8, continue to advocate to the government to review grant funding opportunities, new and existing, that enable council to continue to meet local asset renewal obligations and deliver for our community.
Thank you, Ms Eddy. There's so much in this, it's hard to know where to start, but I would ask Councillor Withen to move a motion on this straight away. Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Toll. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make an alteration to the motion in under point 1. I request that council continues to express its opposition to the levy itself, and council is significantly disappointed with Victorian Government's approach to the collection and implementation of the ESVF. I prefer that wording.
Thank you. Are you happy to second that? Thank you. So you may move on.
And that's right, thank you. And while I'm here, I just want to let everyone in the community know that this council has been working extremely hard, every single one of us, with Joe McCracken, Bev MacArthur, the CFA and the other services to try to get this tax scrapped. So we're trying to do our best for everyone in the Shire in relation to the levy and the way it's been implemented, and we won't stop fighting. We can only do what we can do, but know that we are doing everything in our power to help everyone in the Shire, because we don't want to be collecting it either.
Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw. Councillor Toll, would like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the work that's gone into that too, Senator. Where do you start on this levy fund, whatever you want to call it? I can see what's going to happen. We've got a hell of a drought. We've got a hell of a situation going on. We'll be sitting here next year in probably May saying we've got no money to pay the bills. I've mentioned it before, and it's a direct result. And I know we're not allowed to get political, we're meant to be apolitical, but the state government will send the shires, not just us, all the shires affected by drought broke. The farmers have got their farm machinery to pay for. They've got their farms to pay for. They've got their stock to pay for. Most of them are being faced with $20,000 or $30,000 a week extra in fodder and feed at the moment. They have not got the capacity to pay the fire levy, even though they've held it for a year. Then what's going to happen the year after? You don't get out of a drought with a little sprinkle of rain. You know, we're in a hell of a situation moving forward for the next 2 or 3 years, and then next year it'll go up to God knows what, 250%. Well, we're going to be in severe problems financially as a shire, and that will mean services will be cut, everything will be cut because of what they're doing in Melbourne to cover their muck-ups. And I'm very proud of our little shire, what we've done. We're batting above our pay grade, out of our crease big time, and doing what we're doing. And yesterday in Ballarat, there was a hell of a turnout there on a cold, visible, beautiful winter's Ballarat day. And there were hundreds of people there and hundreds, there would have been 100 trucks there. And we just got to keep the fight going. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Toll. Other councillors would like to speak? No, I think there has already been a great deal said, and I second everything that's been said. But I think I just want to hark back to the fact that we are so incredibly passionate about this. Thanks to a local resident, Mr. David George, we were one of the first to hold that meeting, that little meeting in the hall just right next to us here, right back in weeks ago, before it actually became a bigger thing. From there, we had a number of our amazing residents, and particularly led by some people at Warborough 2 to start the rallies down in Spring Street, and they were the first ones that then led to the ultimate huge one that happened when the budget was submitted. However, of course, the legislation had already gone through by that stage, but we know the importance now, being sort of absolutely astounded that it was able to get through a legislation that's putting so many under incredible financial risk, but not only that, mental health risk, and just the disproportionate fairness of it, that the regional people and particularly farmers being impacted, where we are still, as Councillor Wardlaw has now just altered that recommendation, but we are incredibly fundamentally opposed to this levy, which we really believe is a tax with a different name, and is absolutely incredibly unfair the way it's been proportioned out across the state. But it will, no matter how it's proportioned, it'll affect every single person in the state. And I think it's really clear we need to then look at ways that we are able to support our residents. And I think it's really pertinent, and we thank Ms. Edity too, like highlighting online payment plans to be able to support people to have that flexibility and not have to pay that interest on money that they don't have. We can't be asking them to for that debt that they're already going to be experiencing to be then exponentially increased. But we do also fundamentally believe we should not be collecting this tax as local government. It's a state tax. We would very much still implore state government to please to collect it directly, because now we are now faced with the fact that how do we let our residents know that that part of the money is not going into the services that we need to provide as local government, and we struggle, and we're operating off the smell of an oily rag as it is to try to be able to look after our residents. So the fact that we then have to add this and the stress on our residents, we know is just truly unfair, and we really need our residents to know that we will support you though. So even though we do have this levy in front of us, we are working strongly to be able to support residents in being able to pay that, but also if they can't, or there's those pressures, those mental health pressures, there's those financial pressures, we do very much seek our residents to ask for that support, to seek support where they need that, and we'll be actively moving towards that. We're looking at running a number, and we have a number of sessions already in play to be able to support our farmers to manage drought conditions, which they're under at the moment, to manage that mental health impact that there may be, but to know that we will still continue, no matter how it's possible for us to be able to continue to provide those services and make sure that we are a council that you can rely on to support you all, even in light of this impact that's happening across all shires in Victoria at the moment. So in light of that, thank you for your contributions to that, and we do hope that through advocacy that the Victorian government will understand and be able to work with us and our residents to support our residents in a positive way. And in light of that, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour to the altered one, and that's carried. Thank you. Item 11.3.2 is our budget submissions, and it was pleasing to receive those, and we thank those community members that have put them forward for consideration. I will hand again to Ms. Edity to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to receive and consider both verbal and written submissions relating to the 25-26 draft budget, 10-year financial plan and the revenue and rating strategy, which Council resolved to put out for draft public exhibition at the 28th April special meeting of Council. Submissions have been provided to councillors to enable review and consideration, and we thank our community for their contribution. On that premise, the officer's recommendation is that Council receives and considers verbal and written submissions relating to the 25-26 draft budget, 10-year financial plan and revenue and rating plan, and 2, notes the development of the 25-26 draft budget, 10-year financial plan and revenue and rating plan has complied with Section 96 of the Local Government Act 2020 in respect to hearing verbal presentations in support of written submissions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms Eddy. May I ask Councillor to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Phelan, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Would you like to speak to that at all, Councillor Phelan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, only to say just how impressed I am by the community members who took the time to really review those documents and provide the feedback, which would be my same comment for the next item as well. Really, some people have put a lot of thought into the review and commenting on those documents. Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Ferrari. I think it has been said. I think the detail as well, people really took the time, you know, in light of their love for improving what we can provide to the community. So we're really thankful for that. In light of that, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. So that does bring us to the next item, which is the submission consideration of the integrated suite of strategic council documents that went out for public consultation. And thank you, Ms Jacinta Eddy again. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to receive and consider verbal and written submissions relating to the draft Council Plan 2025 to 2029, the draft Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan, and any required changes to the Community Vision 2031, which Council resolved to put out for public exhibition at the 28th April special meeting of Council. Again, all submissions have been provided to councillors for consideration, and we thank those that have taken the time for their contribution. On that premise, the officer recommendation is that Council receives and considers verbal and written submissions relating to 1, the draft Council Plan 2025 to 2029, 2, the draft Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan 2025 to 2029, and 3, the existing Community Vision 2021 to 2031. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Eddy. And may I ask the councillor to move a motion to that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Wardlaw, and seconded Councillor Phelan. Councillor Wardlaw, would you like to speak to it? Councillor Phelan, you've already spoken again. Thank you for all those submissions again, all community members. We're so grateful for that, and it really does help us to provide the best vision forward for council. Any other councillors? Sorry, I didn't look over here. So in light of that, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, and that's carried. Thank you again. I'll now move on to 11.3.4, and I'll ask Mr Nolan please to speak to the Community Satisfaction Survey for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Purpose of this report is to formally present the Community Satisfaction Survey report that is undertaken in our communities on an annual basis. Council subscribes to the state facilitated survey consultant to undertake this work, and as council are aware, it's been undertaken for several years now. As part of this work, members of the community are invited to provide their comment about how important services are and on council's performance in delivering those services. And there's a range of measures there. I think in the report, we've reported there about 16 different services, and of those services, you can compare council's performance in this year with council's performance last year, and compare with the small rural grouping, which is a group of councils that have like interests and like services, and a group and comparison with the statewide average. So just looking at the stats at this point in time, of those that reported there, I think there's 16 areas. Pyrenees Shire Council results for 2025, in comparison to the statewide average, council performs equal to or better on 12 of those areas and below on 4 of those. In respect of comparison to the small rural councils, council compares better or equal to on 13 of the measures and less on 3 of those measures. There is some improvements in a number of those areas by a slight amount. Some among the top performing areas were waste management, appearance of public areas and libraries, and the lower performing areas were unsealed roads and sealed roads, where there's a lot of room for improvement in maintaining the community satisfaction there. Despite the fact that there'd been a significant improvement in the score for unsealed roads when compared with the previous year. Without analysing all of those results, because the report is pretty fresh off the printer, it's there for digestion, and there'll be opportunity for council to sit down in a controlled and measured way to be able to analyse and talk through how council may be able to improve the satisfaction of our community through its service delivery in future, based on the feedback that we've received from the community here. And so the recommendation is that council publishes the 2025 Community Satisfaction Survey report on its website, that the council uses the results of the survey to review council plan performance targets where appropriate, uses the results of the survey to support the implementation focus of the new council plan, uses the results of the survey to review specific areas for continued improvement and effort, and uses the results of the survey relating to the local road network as evidence to support ongoing advocacy on the need for increased critical infrastructure funding and for more responsive disaster funding provision.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. I'll put that recommendation to move the motion on. Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Seconded, Councillor Feeling. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I place great significance and importance on the Community Satisfaction Survey. I think it's a really good guide, and we should take notice of it. The results are pleasing with improvements in most areas, so that's really, really good. Still got a bit of work to do. I note that the consultation engagement was slightly down, and it's extremely important that we as an organisation continue to work hard on improving this. So don't want to put a negative on it, because most of them are up, which is a fantastic thing. I also note that with times when we have discussions, we compare our scores to those of the state averages. It's my feeling that we could compete against ourselves in the ratings and seek an upward trend on our own previous scores rather than worrying about state scores. So really we should be just competing against ourselves. If we've got a score for this year, then we should be working very, very hard to try and improve that for next year. The results of the survey should always be considered in our thinking when developing plans, consultation or projects, with a high emphasis on continuous improvement and service delivery excellence, which sort of reflects some of those officer recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Phelan, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I'd like to echo Councillor Ferrari's words. It is pleasing to see that there's some improvement there, and I do note, Madam Mayor, that Mount Emu residents have given the highest score on a number of metrics there. So you're the pace setter, and we can all aspire to residents who are as satisfied. But yeah, I think it's a good start. We've obviously got more work to do, but I do place great importance in these surveys, because at the end of the day, we are here for the community. And so, yeah, it will be good to see how we perform against this year by the time 12 months comes around. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Phelan. Any other councillors would like to speak? I think just to reiterate that as well, and I think it was really pertinent what you said to councillor Ferrari, and that to be looking at against our own results, and councillor Phelan, of course, echo that. And that's what we are about. We're constantly wanting to improve, and it is incredibly pleasing we already have. And actually, I just quickly looked through the first, the ones in the report, and there was only one where we hadn't improved on last year against ourselves. So that's incredibly pleasing, but it's also, as you said, councillor Phelan, we need to set a pace that we're constantly striving to hear and know from our residents that we are meeting your demands and doing that as best as we can. And as councillor Ferrari said, you know, if some of the areas such as consultation engagement, we are lowering, they're crucial elements and areas that we need to work on. So we definitely, we've started, but we've got a long way to go as well. And we hear that from our community, and we thank all those people for giving us that feedback. And please do, I urge the public, please jump online to be able to see those results, and we're always welcome to any comments and any recommendations to be able to improve our service. So even though the survey is closed, please always know we're open to that feedback, and through the correct channels and through the website, you're able to do that. So we do encourage you. So in light of that, I will now put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you so much. We're now on to our almost final item, and that's 11.4.1, and the Chief Executive Officer will now speak to the payment in lieu of rates scheme for the energy storage systems. Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to bring to Council's attention and the community's attention about this payment in lieu of rates scheme for energy storage facilities. Now, the payment in lieu of rates scheme exists at the moment in legislation, and it's used as a methodology for determining the payments to councils by wind farm developers and also solar generating facilities in lieu of the payment of rates as they're applied to other ordinary ratepayers who pay on the basis of capital improved value under the Government Act. So this methodology effectively generates approximately $1.38 billion to Pyrenees Shire annually under that methodology from the 4 wind farms that currently operate within the Pyrenees Shire. If in future there are energy storage facilities that are proposed or established in Pyrenees Shire, this is a methodology that the government is proposing for those facilities. Now, there's not been sort of sufficient time ahead of writing this report to actually get to the detail about whether in fact the discussion paper is discuss the merits of the discussion paper. So I've really just put it in front of you with an expert from the document with a view to seeking council to support a submission to be made on this, basically to represent what might be best for our community. Now, without actually getting into the detail of it, I'm just raising it, bringing it to council's attention, also seeking your support that a submission be lodged.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. I'll firstly open that up for a councillor to move a motion on that recommendation. Thanks, councillor Phelan. Seconded, councillor Ferrari. Would you like to speak first, councillor Phelan? Councillor Ferrari. I think actually I just have one question. I think you've answered this before for me, in that this in lieu of rates, because often these industries they're quite wealthy there, and a lot of residents often say, well, how come I have to pay these rates, and is that a fair way to do it across the board? But I know in discussions that in fact this payment in lieu of rates is actually more beneficial in most cases, and for us it is more beneficial in the Pyrenees Shire. Is that correct? Or, you know, to be able to work through this sort of methodology?
Well, I suppose the question, as I understand, is that this methodology is more beneficial to the Pyrenees Shire than if it was under another methodology, such as capital improved value. Well, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case, but the matter has been tested in courts, and the legal outcome of that, as I understood it, was that the infrastructure was deemed as chattels, in which case, there's a different consideration on the capital improved value. So not as permanent fixtures as such. So that was an interesting sort of development. But there's not a direct answer to your question.
No,
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but the methodology that we've got is the one that's been established in law, and it's been tested in law. So the issue here is whether or not that methodology should apply to battery storage facilities as compared to renewable generators.
No, thank you. That did partly answer that, because basically this submission, well, I feel like in some ways it's a little bit not defunct, but if the methodology has already sort of been considered by government, that they will just go ahead with it anyway. We're sort of our submissions, whether they'll make much of a difference is probably the comment I'm making there. But part of it, I was trying to understand the methodology because part of it on page 431, I think it is, just near the end there, and that describes the methodology, that part of the paper. It said too that further discounts though can apply when a generator is not heavily utilised as measured by its capacity factor, whatever that means, meaning that less than 10% payments are reduced by 50% and between 10% and 20% payments are reduced by 25%. I would say if they, again, farmers can't then choose, if they don't make as much money off their farm, to then pay less rates. How come, again, quite a wealthy industry can have those, and I may be reading it wrong, but it sounds like if they are not making the money off a generator, then they get discounts from that. We don't give that to farmers. I find it very unfair that big industry can sort of have those considerations. Can we have that as part of the submission? Maybe that needs to be my comment.
I'm happy to work that in.
Yeah, thanks.
And check in with you, Madam Mayor, to make sure that the submission reflects the intent.
And because possibly we can't put into the submission, can we make a little bit more so that it's in line with what everyone else has to pay? But that would be my other comment as well. Makes sense. But yeah, sorry, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's another example. We've got no control over what the wind farms and the government are doing. They're dictating to us where they're going to put them, how much revenue we're going to get out of them, where they're going to put their power lines. Now, most of these wind farms are all overseas owned. Any profits, they're not going back into communities, they're going overseas. The other one is too, with our ESVF, they're paying 5.9 cents. Yeah. There's just a hidden agenda to let everything work for these wind farms as opposed to our local community. If we had $300 million or $400 million tied up in a wind farm or whatever the latest one costs, now we're getting an average of 342,000 out of rates per wind farm in the region. If a farm was worth that much money, they'd be paying a hell of a lot more than that. During construction, they bugger up our roads a fair bit with all the trucks and the concrete and the steel and everything that's got to come to and from them. Even on the weekend, when we were going, the road was blocked in a wide load with some transformer going out to the other side of Avoca there, in the fog. You couldn't, it was literally blocked.
As big as this room.
was as wide as this room. You had to get off the road. They're the vehicles that we're getting buggering up the roads, as I say, and they're paying minimal rates compared to everyone else. So I think if we can put in our submission that a bit of an increase would be fair, considering they're allowed to get less money if they don't turn them on.
Thank you, Councillor Child. It is just about a fairness factor. I mean,
Yes.
we are budgeted to receive over, 1.3 million there, but we just want it to be fair, just fair. That's all we ask. But yeah, in light of that, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour, and that's carried. Thank you for the discussion on that. As I'm going to item 12, can I look at my first victim? Are you happy with my first victim? Thank you. For our councillor reports, and I'd love to hand to Councillor Ferrari. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Number of meetings, a few meetings with the BPS 60 in relation to the Beaufort Primary School. They do a fantastic job and they put in so much work and effort, and they have been for a long, long time. So it's a really great effort for them to stick at that and be so committed to their cause. I think it's finally starting to pay off for them a bit. Council briefings, a special council meeting, been to the Western Highway Action Committee meeting, which myself and Mr. Gowan sit on, and we continually raise the issues that are needed to be raised about issues that we have in our patch about the Western Highway. And they do get recorded. So sometimes we get some responses, sometimes we don't, but we do raise the issues constantly. And thanks to Mr. Gowans, he's on the ball with all that needs to be done there. I think the main thing I'd really like to talk about is a game of football that was held the other day up here at Beaufort when Tom Hawkins, the ex AFL player, played, and I think it was much more, from my perspective and everyone's perspective, it was much more than a community. It was much more than a football game. It was a community event, and that's exactly how it played out. It was a massive crowd there. I'm not actually sure how many, but probably the most I've ever seen up there at the Oval for a game through the year. And it's just a real credit to the Football and Netball Club Committee and the volunteer brigade who worked from the moment they found out we were successful on the draw right through to the day of the game and all day and that night as well. So it was just a massive effort and it just went so smoothly and it was just fantastic. The council were a big part of that, so thank you to the council and the officers that participated in making that day such a special event. The service clubs and the businesses that supported the day, and most people volunteered for the day. So again, that volunteering theme coming through where they see it's a community event, they put their hand up and help out. So that's fantastic. Thanks to the Hepburn Football Netball Club for the way they participated in the day. They were great on the day. They participated in the day and were really good about it. And I think they were pretty happy to see Tom. Well, even though we won, I think they were pretty happy to see a legend like Tom Hawkins run around. A big thanks and a really, really big thank you to Tom Hawkins himself. His commitment on the day and his willingness to try and get to everyone was just humbling. He started a bit earlier and he finished later, and there wasn't a moment when he wasn't signing something or talking to someone, especially the kids. He spent a lot of time with the juniors, netballers and footballers, and it was just fantastic. It was really humbling, to be honest. So I cannot thank Tom Hawkins enough, and I did have a brief discussion with him. He's just a fantastic country guy and a great footballer. So it was a very special community day, enjoyable. So thank you. That's it for me, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. I'll move to Councillor Toll, please, if that's okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a fairly quiet month, really, apart from the basic council meetings and briefings. Daylight hours don't encourage us to get out that much at the moment. But we have been to quite a few ESVF bits and pieces and advocating strongly with members of parliament across the board. We're on first name basis with everyone in there at the moment and constantly communicating with them. So that's building good relationships. Went to the art show next door here a week or so ago, and what a fantastic effort that is by the local Rotary Club and the council and everything. It really was good to see a lot of people out and about on a miserable night, and there was some quite outstanding bits of artwork there. I don't think myself I'll get one in there next year, but and on a lighter note, I made a discovery during the week or last weekend. I found my great grandfather. He's at the Waterloo Cemetery, so
Wow.
yeah, it was, I didn't know that. I thought they were in Beaufort, but he's closer to home. So,
That's cool.
and my great grandmother, so yeah, very close. So anyway, that was about it. Thank you.
Lovely. Councillor Woodland?
Thanks. A little bit like Simon, it was a bit quiet a month for us, which was lucky because I got the flu really badly, and yeah, I was glad to not be doing so much. but all in all, I did do rallies for the ESVF, like in Ballarat yesterday, where it was quoted. They said there were about 50 trucks. I think there were more like 80. You know, but that was just yeah. Anyway, they'll always talk it down a little bit. So I'm going to talk about things going forward. I've been busy. I was busy supporting the Terry Floyd Memorial that's going to be unveiled on Saturday, the 28th of June. And I've been informed by Daryl Floyd that everyone is welcome. He's actually opened it up. He wants people to come. Initially, he wanted it to be a little quiet thing, but now he's like quite happy to see the support from people. I wanted to thank Mr. Nolan, Madam Mayor, and the councillors for supporting this memorial, both financially and with heart, because you know it's just something that needs to be acknowledged in Avoca, and I know it's being well received already. The feedback I'm getting, so you know, greatly appreciate that. Then I just wanted to let everyone know also on Friday, July the 11th at 6 p.m, there is a free night in the Avoca Shire Hall for a viewing of Just a Farmer. This has been organised by the ladies from the Pyrenees Mental Health and Wellbeing Network. It's completely free. The food's available. There's going to be lucky door prizes. Layla McDougall will be present. I've been informed that there might be some members of Parliament present as well. So it should be a really good night. And just, you know, because of what's going on with the drought and the ESVF, this is in response to that. So this is really, really important, you know, that we support each other, you know, that we get together and we can have a laugh and a chat and a feed, because it's when we go silent that, you know, bad things happen. So we've really, really got to be available for each other. And I'm going to be a little bit cheeky and just ask whether Mr. Nolan and the council agree to perhaps helping out these girls, because they've really, really done a fantastic job, with maybe a little donation of, you know, free use of the hall or something, just to support them through this. You know, it's for everyone. It's not, you know, a profitable type thing, and maybe something into a door prize or something. It'd be really great if we could just support them, because they're doing what we wanted to do, you know, and they've just done it all for us. So I just think it's a fantastic thing. So I hope everyone can come along to that.
Just
Just
in response to that request,
Yeah.
councillor, we do have a standard policy and practice in respect of our community funding program, where we bring applications to council periodically to determine. There's also the out of session requests, so where they don't fit within the funding cycle, and those requests can be made at any time, and there's a really streamlined process where they can be processed quickly and a decision made fairly quickly around those. Up to, I think it's up to about $500 for those sorts of things. We recently provided some free hall hire for another community group recently, so it's really consistent with what we're able to do and achieve, and given the benefits of this and the purpose of it, you know, it would seem to fit within the criteria. So I'm happy to follow it up with the organisers to put it through that process.
Thank you. Appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Phelan.
Thank you. And also for me, probably a little bit of a quieter month. In addition to the regular meetings, which everyone's mentioned, obviously speaking with community members a lot about the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund. I didn't get to Ballarat yesterday, but I did get to the Back the Bush event, which was fantastic, not only to see the community support, but also as an opportunity to speak with councillors from some of the neighbouring councils. That was really good to have a little kind of roundtable conversation just about different approaches people were taking. I think at the last meeting I mentioned that the launch of the Rail Heritage Project was coming up. So now I can speak about that retrospectively. An absolutely fabulous event in Crowlands. And again, hats off to the Landsborough Historical Group for the passion and dedication they've shown getting that project off the ground and negotiating with, I think, 4 councils to actually make that project work. So that's, yeah, great tenacity on their part. And just recently also have been down at Redbank checking out their roadworks for the, or I should say their streetscape works, and look forward to following up with you about that, Mr. Nolan. Yeah, but otherwise looking, oh, and I'm booked in, sorry, for the Just a Farmer event. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Phelan. And again, that heritage project, like, just incredible. So thank you to all those involved on that too. I've actually had a very busy month. Particularly just with that, the ESVF, it's been an incredible journey over the last month from our town hall meeting that really started to highlight it. And again, I'd like to actually pull out the significance of Councillor Toll's action and that too with others to start those rallies. That the huge rally that happened in Melbourne wouldn't have happened without that action that came from that whole meeting, and particularly Councillor Toll and others that were part of that. And I think that really needs to be noted. And again, to highlight Mr. David George, his push to be able to have that meeting in the first place, and for everyone to activate and move on that. I really feel it was those actions that have led to at least the reprieve at the moment, but also state government understanding just how significant the ESVF is. I was trying to get into Parliament as they were debating that. We had an MAV dinner that night, and a few of us went over. I didn't have a ticket, so we went, and I think they actually kick everyone out at a certain time. But it was so significant to be standing outside those walls at that stage, and then talking about it with fellow councillors across the state and understanding perhaps the knowledge that some people had of it, and the knowledge of the impact it was going to have on their councils and their municipalities, but also people that weren't really as aware, and metropolitan councils perhaps not realising the impact that it was going to have on them as well. So from that, and then going to State Council on that Friday, and I got up and spoke about our stance on that, and I spoke very strongly about the impact on regional people, not only financially, but their mental health. But I also absolutely stated that it is going to impact everyone across Victoria, and that's why it is really unprecedented, the impact it will have. We have gone through many other trials, and we will get through this. We're here to support our community through it, but it just has been an incredible journey. From there, we've had a great amount of media coverage, and I've met the first lot I met with were fellow mayors down the southern part of the state to band together to show our opposition to this this levy and the impact it was going to have on our residents. I had been talking to mayors north of us as well, and we had requested to be able to meet with the Premier. Unfortunately, we've just received, after a couple of weeks, the Premier doesn't want to meet us on that issue at this stage, but we will keep advocating. We've also been down to Booker, and again, I was able to represent us to be one of the speakers at that event, and again, it highlighted, while we were standing there, we were near a beautiful old shearing shed, but we were literally surrounded by paddocks of dust. It was just dust. There was not a scrap of grass there. So we want to be able to support our farmers and understand, and we're so thankful for the rain, but we know that we still need a great deal, and it can take time to come out of that state of drought, and the cost the excess debt that farmers have had to go to just to feed and to water their stock. So we'll definitely be watching that space. And of course, we had the rally in Ballarat too yesterday, and there was a number of us standing there or driving around in the rain for about 5 hours. So it was significant, but again, it was so important. I know Mr. Barotti was there as well, and it was incredible to know the camaraderie that is there, because it is such a significant issue to continue to advocate for. Moving on to more positive notes as well. I was also at the incredible footy match. I was one of the volunteers in the canteen at 8 o'clock, and even the spirit in the canteen was incredibly, it was palpable. I just have to say the positivity for the entire day was palpable, from early start with everyone setting up and getting ready right through to the evening function. And again, to have someone of that calibre, not just calibre of his sporting ability, but of who he is as a community person. And he was beautiful. He went and he signed everything. He had photos with everyone. He presented all the young ones. My Jack was part of the group that won the Spirit Award at the Interleague, and he presented them with that, and they were stoked. My other son, Max, won Best on Ground and got an award, and it was his birthday, so they even sung him a happy birthday for his 14th birthday. But that's the sort of person Tom Hawkins is, and everyone getting involved, and all the volunteers at the club, from the fellow Mick, I think it was, who had nominated the club for it. It was, the community atmosphere was just incredible. And when we're talking about supporting our communities from a mental health perspective, that's the sort of thing that shines. Just a farmer, that sort of commitment. We know our communities band together, and I'm just so incredibly proud to be mayor of an area that does that. And that football day was a beautiful representative of that. I think too, another fantastic community group together, and again, Councillor Toll was a guest speaker at this event, was the B4B Connections Matter networking evening. The variety of people that were there was incredible. We had, like, from the Girl Guides group through to a photography group that were there that we knew, like, they're a business that have just started in the area. Through to all the other service groups, and that it was an incredible evening and very poignant. Councillor Toll spoke about his journey into becoming part of this municipality, and both from a business perspective and a personal perspective, and that was really impactful for the people that were there. So it was a fantastic evening. I attended, it was such a fun day, the Pyrenees play group. So I attended the first session they had in Snake Valley, and that was just again such a supportive group. We have Jen, who's our lady who works in that area. Jen McGree is incredibly good, not only supporting those young children to have such an entertaining session every time, but also connecting those parents who may not have those other connections, and particularly in regional areas, they may not have access. Providing that is essential. So that was wonderful. Councillor Toll and I were also at the Central Highlands Water drink tap fountain presentation at Lexton. And again, all these beautiful young footballers and netballers that were there, and something like providing that water fountain. And we might think it's a very basic thing, but it's a very necessary thing. And when we're trying to promote health amongst our young people, and we've got a beautiful resource in our drinkable water, that was just, it was a great event to be part of. And I was also part of the Beaufort Primary School one as well. And again, we had our beautiful little school captains up there holding the little drink bottles with myself again. And it was, I just think there's so many great things happening. We want to keep promoting that, and we thank all those people that work together to be able to support those things happening. So on that note, I will finish there, but it has been a very busy month, and I thank everyone and all the councillors, because every single one of us has in our own way contributed to advocating for our community in the light of this levy. We've got a long road ahead with a number of issues that we've had brought up at the council meeting tonight, but we desperately want our community to know that we are here to do that. And please reach out where you need that. Look out for those events coming up. Just a farmer. This Wednesday too, I'd like to plug another event that we've got in Beaufort again for farmers to look at ways that they can work through these challenging times. So look out. All these are advertised on our Facebook page and also on the website. So please check those out for more details. In light of that now, we will move to closed council, and I will ask a councillor to move a motion to move into closed council Thank you, councillor Ferrari, seconded councillor Phelan. All those in favour? And may I thank our amazing gallery. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Enjoy the rest of your
Can I
evening.
just say thanks to the Pyrenees Shire, everyone who's come. It's been marvellous, and especially I've been worried about the mental health of a lot of people.
Yes.
Especially young ones.
Yes.
Young ones are really important. I haven't been through the dreads or this sort of work, and it's a shock to their system, and it's great to see what you're doing, mate. It's really good, and
Thank you.
thanks very much.
Yeah,
anyway,
thank you.
for your support generally with the levy exit and the drought situation. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
See ya. Thank you very much.
See you then.